Top of the morning, everyone. Welcome back to the new year. My name is Tshidi, and we're back with brand new top of the morning updates. And I felt that it might be a good idea to start the new year with a Q&A session. So some of the questions that you guys might have, please, shoot as many questions as possible. As I was saying to some of the guys a few days ago, please take a few minutes to go and subscribe to my YouTube page, because I've decided that since a lot of people have been saying, it's sometimes very difficult to get access to some of the videos on LinkedIn, they would like to make sure that they can at least see them on YouTube, because they can download them at work and do some of these things offline. So I'm here today to try and answer as many of your questions as humanly possible. Those that I don't have an answer for, I will definitely comment, and I'll say to you guys, I don't have an answer for that one. I can always get somebody from somewhere else to assist me in answering some of your questions. But like I said, let's just do a good 20 minutes of Q&A. So whatever questions you guys have, please let's address them. My YouTube page, you can just look for my name. It's Tshidi Kuno. I've loaded a few of the videos that we did a couple of months ago, and you guys can then get a few more videos that we currently have. Sorry that I'm at a weird angle now, because I'm trying to make sure that this thing works perfectly. But yeah, we'll get there. We'll figure these things out, and hopefully one day somebody will help me with the awesome ways of actually making sure that the lights do work for us and everything works. So yeah, I will wait for some of the questions that you guys might have. I think for this new year, some of the things that we need to start worrying about is there's been a few questions, obviously, from some of the guys asking about, how do I deal with this? How do I deal with the new changes at work? I'm looking at new opportunities. What do I do to make sure that those opportunities, come my way? So if you have some of those questions, let's actually address them. So there's a slight delay in everything that I say on this side, because then I get to see it a few seconds later. So if I haven't yet answered one of your questions, please don't be scared to type some of those questions, guys. The question will help somebody else that's actually also thinking the same thing. So first thing first, I think let's maybe deal with one of the biggest questions that people have as the start of the year. Do I change a new job, or do I get a new job at the beginning of the year, or do I do it in the middle of the year, or whichever one? I think that one, there's no straightforward answer, mainly because different companies, that recruitment processes get hectic at different times. I mean, if you look at some of the banks, you'll find that recruitment process gets crazier from now going up until November, December, and some of the people are willing to change jobs around that time. So it depends on the company that you are applying for you to actually be able to say, I'll be able to get some of these opportunities in this area. So like I said, everything is addressed based on individual company needs, and you need to just always make sure that whatever you're looking at is based on that company, not based on a rule of thumb that says everybody should be doing things this way every single year. So that's one of the questions that I've had previously. I'll just look at some of the other questions that I've gotten from some of the guys as well that deal with the recruitment space. I know I've also had a few guys that have been asking me a few times to say, listen, I've had a company that liked me. We went through a process, went through an interview process. They then presented an offer. I wasn't happy with the offer. I've asked them to go back with the offer to give me a better offer, and now they're quiet. What do I do? And I've always said to people, if the people are quiet, it doesn't necessarily mean that they've decided to change their minds. There's nothing wrong with literally sending out an email to say, hey, I know we had a conversation last year, what's going on? So I hope that this is actually not on mute. Okay, it's definitely not on mute. I hope so. So if you guys can hear me, please do let me know that you can hear me, so that I don't keep mumbling on, only to find that some of the guys can't hear some of the things that I'm trying to say. But like I was saying, if there's something pending, there's nothing wrong with sending out an email to somebody and saying to them, hey, listen, based on our last discussion last year, how far are things or what's happening on your side, and when can I expect feedback on the new revised offer, if there's going to be a new revised offer. So just make sure that it's okay to send out that email. Don't be scared to type an email to somebody and say, I just wanted to find out about this offer and how far we are. The other thing that I know has been happening quite a lot is people being scared to honestly negotiate offers. I think we're struggling with people saying, I'm scared to ask for a different offer because they might change their minds. Well, if they change their minds, is that really the company that you are going to work for? Because I think it's one of those things where sometimes you'll find that they change their minds mainly because they were not necessarily going to give you what they were going to be able to give you. Or sometimes I think I'd like to say we've met some of the most respectable recruiters out there. In most cases, if they can't afford what you're looking for, they will honestly tell you to say, listen, our budget is a bit tight this time. This is how much we can afford at this stage. You then make the decision yourself to say, what do I then do going forward? The other question that I just got now says, after how long can I call HR after not hearing anything about psychometric tests? The truth is, psychometric tests normally takes about a week or so for the feedback to come back. But then it also takes then a couple of days to give it to the HR or for the psychometrics person to give, the line manager feedback about how the psychometrics came out. But the reality is psychometrics are not necessarily, in most cases, I stand to be corrected, it's not 100% of the decision. It just gives you an idea about the individual and what they'll be able to do and how they'll be able to do certain things. You'll find that other decisions will be based on the interview itself and how the interview went and what people actually think about you as a person that could potentially add value to that particular area. So psychometrics, I would say after a week and a half, you can start asking the HR to say to them, guys, based on this, what's happening? Are we going to get any feedback on what's happened? And be polite. I mean, some of the guys, I know we become very impatient and we start throwing things at people and saying, why are you guys not getting back to me? In most cases, you'll find that there's a few other things that are at play, or there's a few more other people that need to be consulted for a decision to be made. Or sometimes you'll find that you could be doing the psychometrics today, and there's another candidate that can only do the psychometrics next week, Thursday. That basically means they'll be able to look at both your psychometrics the following week. So that's why I'm saying a week and a half gives you both enough time to check. And if they haven't gotten feedback yet, they will tell you to say, we don't have feedback at the moment, but as soon as we get feedback, we'll be able to get back to you. Another question that I got is I wanted to find out how advisable it is to approach a person in HR directly as opposed to going through designated channels. Now, so this is the short and long answer to this one. The reality is, approaching an HR person, you'll find that if you are sure, okay, I always say, if you're 100% sure that person is the one that's looking after that particular role, I would normally say apply first, follow the right channels, because the reality is, I'll take one of the ladies in my team or some of the guys in my team, for example. You'll find that some of them are working between 30 and let's say 40 vacancies. Now, you are one candidate out of probably 5,000 candidates that they've got. If let's say maybe about 100 of those candidates are all approaching the HR person directly to say, hey, I saw a role that's there. In most cases, they're going to say to you, go online and apply. And also sometimes be very careful, because what normally happens is that as much as that person is looking after that particular role at that particular time, it might not be the role that they're screening for, because you'll find that recruiters have to prioritize when they screen certain things. So they could start screening a role next week. So you might see today and you contact them today to say, hey, I saw this role. what do I need to do? And then the recruiter says, go online and apply, because they're only going to start screening that role next week, Friday. They're currently now focusing on another role so that they can give a short list to the line manager. So in some cases, you'll find that they have enough roles or enough candidates that are sending the same exact message. So if you go directly to them, in most cases, it's not going to help your case, because you'll find that they've got too many people doing exactly the same thing. A lot of people are still going directly to them, and they can't always respond to each and every single one of them and say, I've looked at your profile, or I've looked at this. So just be cognizant of the fact that recruiters normally have, most of the time, between 30 and 45 vacancies. And at that stage, you are one of the 1,000. You are one of the 100 that have already that are trying to contact them directly. You are one of the people that are sending them messages directly to say to them, hey, listen, this is what I'm looking for. Can you help me? So there's different channels that people use. Some people are sending us messages through LinkedIn. Some people are sending us email. Some people are sending us messages through their friends. So at the end of the day, I'm dealing with more than 100 people asking me the exact same thing. And me not necessarily being able to help you at that stage doesn't mean that I don't want to help you. It's because I have got 10 others that I need to actually try and also address. The next thing says, hey Tshidi, how do you start the conversation of a salary review after negotiating in your favor at the start of an employment? Now, salary reviews are, if for example you've negotiated when you started employment and you got what you were looking for, I think a salary review is based on, are you at that stage earning what you're supposed to be earning? Apologies for that. Are you at that stage earning what you're supposed to be earning? And if they feel that you're earning what you're supposed to be earning, then it kind of changes things a bit more. But if you go into a salary review, try and get your facts right. Understand why you're actually going through or you're trying to negotiate for a different salary, because then it changes the conversations. It's about saying, what facts do you have that you're about to present to some of these guys, or to different to your leader? Are you have you got more work that you're dealing with? Are you outside of the benchmark? Are they is the benchmark a bit lower than what you're supposed to do? So those are some of the questions that you need to first address for yourself. However, if for example you're earning what you're supposed to be earning, and you know for a fact that in the market you're earning the right amount, then a salary review is just one of those things where you're now confirming that what you're earning is actually the right thing. You don't always have to try and negotiate for a bigger salary, especially if you're already earning what potentially could be the money that you should be earning. So it's very different and very tricky depending on where you are with your new company, or where you are with the company that you're working with. Is that the salary reviews are normally looked at very differently, because normally if you've joined and the guys are already paying bonuses in a month from now, and you only joined a month ago, it basically, you're not going to be doing any salary reviews for you as an individual, because of the fact that at that stage they've already now maybe put in place the understanding of what you'd be earning without getting an increase in the salary review. So those are some of the things that you guys need to worry about. The next question is, when a potential director views my profile, is it premature or being forward to inbox about employment possibly? Yes, very premature to be inboxing people just because they viewed their profile. Something could have caught their attention on your profile, not necessarily that they're actually hiring at that stage. So it will be sometimes very premature to inbox them directly. And remember also, sometimes for that director, what they then do is they'll take your name, give it to somebody in recruitment and say, hey, listen, I saw so and so in the market, and I do think that this is the right person to actually maybe approach. So you'll find that they're not necessarily hiring themselves. They will still submit your details to the recruitment team, to make sure that that recruitment team then reaches out to you. So inboxing that person just because they looked at your profile at that stage, sometimes they're thinking about things in the next month. So if you inbox them to say, hey, I'm looking for a job, it's too early. Just take a step back and see, because sometimes you'll find that they view your profile, and then 2 or 3 days later, somebody else from that company will then view your profile because they've heard about you, and they're now trying to check if what they've heard is actually the right thing, then they will reach out to you in some of those cases. And then the next question says, is there transparency in HR revealing benchmark research report? In most cases, there is transparency. However, I do think that what is very important is that different companies use different benchmarks. So you'll find that some of the companies are using benchmarks from company X, the other companies are doing benchmarks from the company Y. That doesn't necessarily mean that those benchmarks actually work for your industry, because you could find that each benchmark is different. You could find that financial services benchmarks, they normally use company X, and then industrial side, they use company Y. So the benchmarks are very different. However, depending on the size of the company and depending on the different roles, you might find that in some companies, you could find 10 different business units that have got the same title, role that they're doing, but the people are doing different things. It doesn't always mean that in that instance the benchmarks are going to be the same for those individuals, because of the fact that the complexity of what each one of those people are doing is very different. The only difference that we've got is that the naming convention is the same. So you'll find that transparency is normally a lot with the line managers, where line managers are always aware of what the benchmarks are for that particular role that you actually are looking at. And then the next question says, what practical advice would you give a graduate trainee being absorbed into the company on a permanent managerial role, in particular relating to people in the department that might not be happy that you are ahead of them with the minimal experience? So the easiest thing that you can look at in this one is what people assume or perceive about you and your experience has got nothing to do with you. Focus on why the business has actually seen you being a very valuable individual and why they would like to offer you that opportunity. So if you start worrying about, oh no, these guys are going to perceive me as junior, then unfortunately what then happens is that you end up getting into this rut of trying to prove to them that you're not junior, and you end up dropping a few balls because you're focusing too much on what they're trying to prove. If somebody gives you a managerial position and because they believe that you'll be able to step into that role, focus on delivering on that managerial position. And anything else that you're struggling with, make sure that you always ask for help. Because I always say to people, do not wait for somebody to validate your ability. Make sure that if there's a question that comes up, you're able to deal with some of those questions as much as you can. So it's not about comparing yourself to other people. Try and focus a lot more on what can you deliver, and once you know what you can deliver, focus on that. And if people are giving you a hard time mainly because you've just been promoted into a vacancy or into a new role, then that's a different conversation, because then you now have a conversation with the line management or your boss at that stage to say to them, like what do I need to do to deal with that particular individual. So that's how you do it. Focus on what you can deliver and try and understand why they've actually offered you that particular role. Sorry guys, I'm trying to also respond as I go along in some of the questions that I've got that are coming here. And how important is it to have a cover letter when submitting your CV? Haven't had to apply in a long time, so not sure how CVs are looking, including cover letters. So the past research that I've been doing a lot is that cover letters have sort of been a bit of a thing of the past. They work a lot more on the graduate space. A lot of companies don't necessarily always ask for cover letters. They'll normally at least ask specifically for it. In some cases, they're just looking for an application to say, send us an application, and they want a very simple and succinct CV. So it's not always the one where you have to always put together the cover letter. When it comes to cover letters, guys, I would say try and make sure that at least you first understand if there's a requirement for that cover letter before you submit your cover letter, because in some cases they don't really require the cover letter. And as I mentioned in my previous chat earlier with some of the guys, I said some of the times you'll find that recruiters have got 30 or 40 vacancies. They're not always going to be reading the cover letter, so it doesn't always help you where they have to now go through this long cover letter thing. And then if you're then going to put together a cover letter, we always say 2 paragraphs is enough. And don't go and put like a 20-page cover letter, because then you lose out on the content that you're trying to actually share with a lot of people. I see that a lot of questions are coming through. The next one that I've got, guys, it says, how do you advise someone who works for a company that always receives short salaries, and company will tell you that it's a mistake but happens every month? Sure, that's a tricky one. I think that one is it's probably the one of the questions that I said it will be very difficult for me to answer. I think it depends on what some of the reasons are as to where your salary is always not what you thought you were getting every single month, and they keep on saying it's an excuse. So that one, I think, to be honest, I think maybe the guys on the legal side, on the other side of the HR, would be able to actually help me with that one. It's a very difficult one to actually answer, because I wouldn't really know what to say, because that's now, it's a breakdown in just that company itself, not necessarily something that's got to do with things that you've got control over. So it's very difficult to respond to that particular ones. And then next question says, how many pages should a professional CV have? 2 to 3 pages max if you've been working for more than 5 years. If you've been working for less than 5 years, 2 pages max. 2 pages is enough. Please don't go and put every single thing. The CV, the way I always say it should be structured, is the first third of the CV should be your contact details, all the information about you, followed by, if you want to put your qualifications, you can put your qualifications there, but also that's the other third, and then your job responsibilities should be there. But your CV should never start with where the first page is those templates that a lot of people use, and then the next page you then having somebody who's now put their contact details on page 2, and then page 3 they start their job, because then by then you've wasted 3 pages. So 2 to 3 pages max is enough. Box X tells the employees, I'll give you something to kickstart the new year because bonus wasn't so nice, but nothing came through. Does the employee query the verbal promise made? It's a relationship with your line manager. It's not about that was a conversation that you and the line manager had. Maybe they might have thought they could give you something because they had planned something on the side. If it doesn't happen, just have a conversation with the line manager, because the moment you start saying, can I query the verbal promises, now it's becoming one of those things where you're like, you promised me this, so I want it. So it's just go back to the line manager and say, hey, listen, remember you and I had a chat. What's happening with that chat? Because I was hoping for something. And you might find that something in the new year basically means end of Jan. So when you start querying the verbal promise, you're jumping the gun, because that something might be coming in Jan. So you can still ask. Just be nice to your line manager and say to them, hey, listen, dude, what's happening? Don't take it into a formal, you promised me this is what I need, because then you break that relationship with your line manager. Tshidi, lately after interviews, the feedback I get is that they had to get somebody who had more technical experience, but tell me, how do we fill in those gaps? So I think it's also very difficult. So sometimes when somebody says we're looking for somebody with a bit more technical experience, there's something specific that I think it might be missing in what you're offering. So sometimes you might then be able to say, go to people that are already in the position. So when you hear that feedback that says, we had to get somebody that had a bit more technical experience, then go to the person that's in the job, because they've given you feedback now. Find somebody that's already in the job and say to them, cool, I've heard that I need to have more technical experience. What technical experience do you have, and what can I build from my side? Because then that way you start shadowing those people in that space. You might then be getting that technical experience to make sure that they're able to get they give you the information that you need from a technical point of view. I've got this very long one that says, I joined lately and not sure what I can do or can't be asked, but I wanted to know what the process is for selecting a candidate for interview. I've applied for a few positions but never got any feedback. Second question is a degree a must for senior positions, irrespective of the number of years? So depending on the different companies, some companies will have a minimum requirement for the company across. So you might find that they're saying, you might have a a matric, and they'll still consider you for a bit more senior positions. But the idea about senior roles is that they expect you to keep on upskilling yourself. I mean, if for example, you've got matric and you're already been working for 10, 15 years, sometimes going through some education and educating yourself is not a bad thing. It shouldn't be something that's coming from the business to say, we want you to have this qualification. Just do it for yourself. It opens up your mind, and it opens up your thinking, and it challenges your thinking. So it's not about what the business requires. Do it for yourself, because then upskilling yourself. It's not about what the company is looking at. And then when it comes to selecting people for interviews, the reality is, in most cases, selecting people for interviews is based on if the role is requiring specific requirements for an individual. Minimum requirements does not necessarily mean that you're always the best candidate. Minimum requirement might just mean that you are meeting the minimum requirements. There's somebody who's got the exact requirements that that role is needing, or there's somebody that might have a few more requirements than what you have. So minimum requirements is one of those things that a lot of people come back and say, but I've got the minimum requirements, fantastic. But somebody else might have the minimum plus more. So you might find that you then get rejected because somebody had a minimum plus more, not necessarily just looking at the minimum requirements. The next question that I've got, sorry, it keeps on, jumping up and down as I try to throw these things. What sort of questions can we expect from an interview? For example, of the interview, give you a chance to ask questions. The interviewer has to give you a chance to ask questions at the end of the process, or you can even ask questions in between the interviews. It's no longer one of those where we're all shooting questions. I think the way we're working these days from a recruitment point of view is that you ask me questions, I ask you questions. The reality is we're interviewing each other. You're not the only one that that is being interviewed. We're also interviewing you. So in most cases, you'll find that we're trying to interview each other in that process. So if you do think you have a question after somebody has asked you a question, ask that. Don't wait, and say, okay, I'll ask this at the end of the day. You might have a question because you want clarity. Do ask that. Don't hold back on something like that. And then one of the ones says, I'm currently employed overseas in the Middle East. I'm interested in making a move back to South Africa, but as soon as the recruiter engaged and found out that I'm based overseas, they disengage. What should I do in the market? I think in some cases about your profile, your CV should be able to say, looking at coming back on this month. Because remember that some of the times the recruiters have got a time frame. So if, for example, you're employed overseas and a recruiter needs somebody to start end of February or to start 1st of March, and you saying, I'm still overseas, but you can't say to them, I am moving back, or I've got a plan to move back middle of February, then the recruiter disengages because they don't know when coming back means. You might still be selling off a few things, so that means them offering you the job now might only mean that you're only going to be able to join them, let's say in June, and they needed somebody to fill in a role now in March. So be clear with the recruiter to say, I'm overseas, but when are you coming back? Not, I'm planning on coming back. When are you planning on coming back? What is your time frame? Because if you don't give people the time frame, then I start thinking, you know what? I'm going to promise myself that this person is going to join us. The business is going to give me pressure, and then I don't get to this person joining me. So be clear with your communication with the recruiter. And you'll be amazed because you might come back earlier than somebody that might still serve notice for a month. So then they might actually be engaging with you a lot more to say, okay, cool, fantastic. That means you might be able to start middle of February instead of somebody that might start 1st of March. So be clear with your communications. And thank you very much, Tony, where you're saying platforms like this are humbling and they're helping others. I will keep trying to do as many of these as possible. And I know I wanted to normally do only 30 minutes on these things, guys. I know we're now sitting on the 30 minutes mark, but let me try and answer a few more questions that I currently have. I know there was a question that said I haven't answered the question yet. Please, if you have that question, please bring it back as quickly as possible so that I can try and answer that question, because I'd like to not miss that. If I do miss it, please send me an inbox and I'll try and respond back to some of those questions, guys, on the inbox side. Hi, Tshidi. The question that always challenges me in the interviews is, what are your weaknesses? Please shed some light on this one. Second question is, how beneficial is it to get an MBA in 2020 in South Africa? It depends on what you want to do with your MBA. I think, let me answer that one first. It honestly depends on what you want to do with your MBA, because it's not as straightforward. Some people do MBAs because they're now starting to take on a bit more strategic role in some of their responsibilities, so they go do an MBA. So it's not a must for people to go there and all run to do an MBA. It honestly, for this one, I can honestly say it depends on what you want to do with your MBA. It's not for everyone. Some roles it plays a huge role, some roles it doesn't. It's up to you and your personal decision to say, why do I want to do an MBA? And then as to what are your weaknesses, the question is, I think sometimes self-awareness is important to say, what is honestly your weakness? Right now, if somebody asks me what are my weaknesses, I'd be able to then introspect and say, what is it that I think I fumble with in my job right now? And be honest enough. Yes, you can sugarcoat it and make it sound polished, but don't go there to people and say my weakness is that I'm a perfectionist. Then you're trying to take a positive thing and turn it into a negative thing. Then we then start thinking, you just like do an introspection and say, what is honestly my weakness? And give people that feedback to say, this is my weakness and I'm working on it. And also, sorry, if you know you have a weakness, please show people that you're working on it. Don't just say, this is my weakness. Cool. Then what? Are you working on that weakness? And what have you started doing? If your weakness is this perfectionist where it's a negative positive, who's helping you to fix that negative positive? Are you working on it? Is it important to include my contact details on the cover letter? Yes, it is. Because if, for example, that cover letter gets lost between your CVs, then they can't look at whose cover letter that is. So definitely contact details should be there. Guys, Microsoft Word, if you have Microsoft Word in your computer, go onto the right side, look under new templates, and you'll find amazing templates that are there that you can actually use. And then last two questions that I've got, guys, is for a person in the HR change management space, what courses or avenues of upskilling should one be doing for the financial industry? I think in this one, where it comes to that, the best thing would be find people on LinkedIn that are in the change management space in the financial industry, connect with them and ask them that question, because it'll be very difficult since I'm not in the change management space. What I might think might work might not necessarily work for those people individually. So I'd say in this one, connect with people on in the financial services industry that are doing the same thing that you're doing, and then ask them that question, because they'll be in a better position to tell you what you can do. What can you consider as constructive dismissal or rejection? This one would need me to call an IR person to come and sit with me. I'm glad that you guys are asking some of these questions. I'll get one of my IR guys to sort of come and share these with me. Unfortunately, it will be very difficult for me to answer this one because that now goes beyond my level of expertise, because now it's based on my perception, and unfortunately I wouldn't be able to answer this one. On the minimum requirements, I've got a national diploma, but the minimum requirement is BSc. The required experience, do I still apply? Yes, in that instance, do apply, because sometimes you find that minimum requirements is minimum requirements, but the experience might sometimes be better than the minimum requirements, because you might have better experience than people that have got the qualification but don't have the experience. So in that instance, do apply. Could you possibly give reasons recruiter for not having get back to you after the interviews? I think even with follow-up emails, I think sometimes people get bogged down with the work that they do, and yes, recruiters do forget. I've made some of those mistakes before in my past as well. People do sometimes forget. It's not that they're trying to be mean or horrible to you. The second thing that sometimes happens with the recruiter giving feedback is that recruiters sometimes feel bad. I mean, they build such a strong relationship with you. They become your confidant. Whatever questions you've got, you throw it at them. And they sometimes struggle just from the heart to be able to say, listen, the guys are saying you're not cutting it. So sometimes it's just a matter of them just making that mistake. But I think for 2020, guys, the reality is some of the recruiters hopefully are watching this. We will try and give as much feedback as we can to candidates. I know we can't always give them the exact feedback, but we'll try and always give feedback to some of the candidates so that they know exactly what what needs to be done. Any tips on how to construct a CV or structure? Guys, I was chatting to two of my friends, Afika and Chad, last night. We've decided that we're going to do another masterclass for all experienced hires. The masterclass is going to cover CV and interview skills. Lesero, please be part of that. I'd love to have you as one of the people that comes and joins us. We're definitely doing a masterclass where we're going to go through CVs, how you can structure a CV. We'll give you guys examples of those CVs. So look out for that one. I should be able to communicate in the next couple of days as to where we're going to have it, what date we're going to have it. Please be there. Please come through. Those that can't make it, if you are in other countries or in other areas, please make sure that you join our live feed, because we're going to also make sure that we do a live feed. Last question, I hope. It says, I've just opened my CV, pretty much the point regarding the personal education information. It gets quite heavy when I get into the detail about my roles, a list of some of the duties performed. So guys, when it comes to duties that you've done, 3 to 4 pages, 5 to 6 lines or bullet points on your roles and responsibilities is normally enough. You can always summarize some of those, and then we'll be able to actually take it from there. Last question that I've got is, so when I leave a job a month before my bonus, can I get my new employer to compensate for the bonus when I join? In your negotiation with the new employer, inform them that you're actually getting a bonus next month. Negotiate on that, because some of the companies will give you a sign-on bonus. Once again, guys, I'm going to take this video that I've just done now, I'm going to load it onto my YouTube channel. Check out my YouTube channel. Please subscribe so that you don't miss out on anything, because you can always go back and check some of the videos that I've done. Just look for Tshidi Kuno, and then you'll be able to find my YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Hit on the bell icon to make sure that every time I load something, you're able to at least get some of those things, and then we'll take it from there. Like I said, look out for the masterclass. I'll be posting it on my page. We'll post it on Chad Thomas's page. We'll also post it on Afika's page. So as soon as we've got that sorted out, we'll be able to actually run it. Recruitment agencies, please come and join us so you can help us with some of these questions that you guys might have answers for. This masterclass is probably going to be 2 to 3 hours. And as soon as I've got the dates and the venue, I will definitely let you know. Top of the Morning, once again, if you haven't found some of my videos, search on LinkedIn for Top of the Morning. If you can't find it there, search it on YouTube for Top of the Morning. You'll find some of the videos that I've done. Thank you so much for being awesome, and thank you so much for your questions. For some of you guys that I haven't managed to answer some of the questions, please copy your question, paste it onto my inbox. Let me try and respond to that. Looking forward to engaging with you guys going forward. Plenty amazing things are happening for you guys this year. So let's do this. I'm going to try and make sure that at least once a week we do something where we share as much information, share some of the questions you'd like to address, and we'll do at least these 30 minutes conversations with you guys. Looking forward to seeing you guys. Peace. Tshidi's out. Until next time. Thank you very much.